E olha só, hein? Estamos ao vivo mais uma vez na rede mundial dos computadores. E, mano, hoje é sensacional. Não que os outros dias não sejam, mas hoje nós temos aqui, mano, o criador, um dos criadores aí do DevOps Days, uma das pessoas que estão desde o começo com essa história de DevOps, mano. Today we have the big pleasure to have here.
Desde o começo com essa história.
My return now is better. Today we have the big pleasure to have here speak to us Patrick Debois, the godfather of DevOps. Hey Patrick, how are you doing? Good.
I'm doing good, Jefferson. And whatever he said in the intro, I'm sorry I don't speak Brazilian, but I understand a little bit from it. So criador is like creator. So I'm doing my best. So yeah, thanks for having me.
So nice, man. So nice. So it's the first time that you talk to Brazil, right? Or to Brazilian audience, right?
Yes. You know, for a specific,
Brazilian guys, yeah.
webinar. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm really excited. You know, the energy. Maybe some backtracking. Like Jefferson's wearing the DevOps Days Ghent T-shirt. Which had like a huge delegation of Brazilian people taking over Ghent, Belgium.
Yeah.
And so they're really like nice people. So I'm happy to return the favor by, doing some talk. So
Nice. First of all, thank you a lot for accepting the invite to talk to us. It's really incredible and a big honor have you here speak to us. Thank you, man. Thank you. Really, thank you. So,
the honor is mine.
So, pessoal, olha só, lembrando sempre que hoje aqui é mais um dia aqui do Fique em Casa Conf, lembrando para dar importância de todo mundo ficar em casa, certo? Patrick, you are living at Belgium now, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, it's the same time that here in Amsterdam, around 9 p.m., right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so it's a little bit dark, but,
Yeah, because in Brazil now is 5 hours less. So now it's around 4 p.m. More or less, yeah.
Nice.
So have some difference. So I'm sure that is always important to remember all the importance to stay at home, if you can, for sure. In this period, in Brazil, we are close to the peak of this crisis. So now again, folks, stay at home if you can, please, because it's so much important, right? If you need to leave your home to go to the supermarket or something else, keep distance of another people, keep around a meter of distance of another people, no touch in every place, and wash your hands always, every moment, wash your hands, right? So everyone is prepared to this amazing talk? Yes or no? Oh, have a lot of people now. Nice. Hey, pessoal, vamos começar então com a bagaça? Todo mundo está preparado? Sim ou não? Mandem aí umas palminhas para o nosso Patrick, certo? Para que ele possa saber. No começo ele estava falando que é uma das coisas, né? A gente estava conversando em off, uma das coisas que ele sente falta é da interação, né? Quando está trocando ideia online. Então, vamos lá. So, let's start the show. Ladies and gentlemen, the espetacular Patrick Debois. Man, the channel is yours now.
Thank you, Jefferson. I want to do first a big shout out to Michelle Ribeiro, for helping me at all the talks and Somaterio with this crazy, help that it did, like the last minute. So thank you for that. That's really a respect for helping me out. And I know, Michelle, I will drink Brazilian coffee, but I need to order and find some first. So thank you very much for that. And yes, wash hands. Totally. So today, yeah, hey, Somaterio, thanks. So today, I will present to you the presentation I did before. Trust me, we're doing DevSecOps. It will be the extended version. It's a version I created today. So it will have many slides. It might even surprise myself because I haven't prepared it, rehearsed it very well. But I'm really happy to share it with you because it's some of my current reasoning around DevSecOps and the things that I've been doing. In the beginning of the year, I joined Sneak as the director of DevOps Relations, and I immersed myself into a lot of the DevSecOps material, and that's what I will share today. So, DevSecOps. Yes, we had DevOps. We now have DevSecOps. Some would say it's bus DevSecOps. There isn't anything special. That's like a spoiler, but then it is kind of special. But we're all in this together as a group. And that's the point that is really important to know. Like we have been separate silos, we have been separate groups. Now DevSecOps is all about working together. And you would be able to say that working together is functioning as a team. And in this diagram of Patrick Lencioni's model, it shows that the most important feature of having a good team is having trust. And when there is not a lot of trust, then the team will not be cohesive. So today, that's the main focus. That is trust. In a lot of talks, when I watch talks online about DevSecOps, it's all about trust, but verify. So it is kind of trusting, but still, we want to make sure that somebody that we trust did actually what he said or she said they would do. But I would call that DevSecOps because you're still policing in a way of verifying all the things. And we use a lot of the tooling actually to do this verification. It's kind of like a drug. We keep going, buying new tools, buying new verification, and I get that. Like a lot of it is automating the stuff that we used to do manually, and it creates this sense of that we're trusting the system, trusting the CI system, trusting whatever gets deployed. So a lot of the trust is actually this kind of false sense of verifying only. We don't even need the real trust. And a lot of them actually go further. They would say it's not just during the build, it is something that is continuously done. The phrase continuous verification was coined by Aaron Reinhardt as something that it never stops, just like CI, continuous integration, continuous delivery. Security now has this notion of continuous security, continuous verification. And this verification team continues. Even if you would say the tools and the people kind of work together, the people verify the tools and the tools verify the people. And it is part of the way the security is actually put out there in DevSecOps. Trust, but verify. An important thing in this equation is to say that it isn't only about the tools, that also the humans are part of the system. In one of his talks, John Ospaugh talks about an experiment he would do with the audience. He asks them, imagine you have your systems running and you would not touch your systems for a day. Would everything still be good? And most are like, okay, yeah, I got my monitoring, everything going. But then you ask, well, how about 2 days? How about a week? And then you start seeing even the people with the most automation crumble. And the reason why is that if we take the human outside of the system will fail too. So we have to understand that the human side is actually part of the system that we're trying to optimize. So we're trying to verify, technology, and we're also trying to verify people or humans. And one good example is that when you push something to Git or any of the repositories, a lot of the activities are not just about checking into a repository and so on. A lot of it is actually about day-to-day conversations that humans have about anything that's going around. They make decisions, whether to merge a pull request, whether to write an additional test. So humans are part of the process. It isn't just technology of bits and bytes flowing into the different production systems. But there is a cost of this verification. And you could say there is a cost of distrust. So the more tools we have to employ, we have the fallacy that we will go faster because, we can automate a lot of the verification, but it will just increase the cost. Just as, asking for permission in meetings. If you need to have like 10 meetings to have something done, there is a lot of cost involved, and this is the cost of distrust. And one of the points where I find most of the distrust or kind of misalignment is happening is actually on backlog prioritization. We have like things people shouting developer first, security first, maybe ops first. I don't know, but it's actually about the business. And that's when you start talking to each of the individual silos. They want to collaborate, but they want their first thing on the backlog. They want to be the most important. And we have to play nice with it. This is something that, we cannot put our own needs, our own goals in a company above all the others. And Professor Dr. Gunther Duck actually calls this the definition of stupidity. And the stupidity is by thinking, I'm going to look for a maximum or an optimum or a minimum, like maximum security, maximum reliability, maximum features, minimum downtime. So you have to think more balanced than just going for the optimum. It is much more nuanced than that. What helps in the way of thinking, prioritizing your backlog is this scheme by Philippe Kruchten. When he made this scheme, it was mostly done only for developers working on software. And he identified that there's not only features which give like positive value and are very visible on the backlog, but there are also things like architectural or bugs or technical debt. And the way he proposed that is kind of like a zipper that you have to mix in the different kind of features on the backlog or the things to do in a way that they make sense. And if we extend that model, we could say that what we actually wanted to do is to mix in the different priorities from DevSecOps and the business in the backlog. And this is where we would have the group discussion of having what is the most important. And if we only look at it from our own silo, from our own perspective, this discussion will be stupid. It will not be balanced. It will not have a good fit. The Black Swan farming canvas shows you that there is more than just features and value. The way that I look at it is by saying you have increased revenue, protect revenue, you reduce the costs, and you avoid costs. So if you want to protect things, that's something that is an investment in security or in reliability. That by doing that, you're also avoiding costs. Let's say there's going to be an intrusion and there's going to be a leak that costs a load of money. So all these different parts need to be mixed in while discussing the backlog. And it cannot just be a standard list of features and then mixing in 80-20%. So what they actually talk about is the cost of delay. But it is very hard to balance between risk and value. And that's where a lot of the friction with DevSecOps results into, that it isn't just like value versus risk. Like there is value in avoiding risk, like in insurance and preventing things. It has equal value than adding new business value. While discussing the backlog, security will typically tell you a good way to start the conversation with devs is talking about threat modeling, all the things that go wrong with all the the risks and all the parts that you want to prevent. I kind of think of threat modeling almost like value streaming mapping as well, but like risk mapping. It's kind of, so it is very similar that what we're doing in value stream mapping is just like what we're trying to prevent. What makes it even more harder to balance things on the backlog is that there's this sense of urgency. So on the upper left hand, we're talking about things that when you delay the cost, then you might miss opportunities, and there's like less business value created. But most of the cases with security is actually have a short benefit horizon. So they're very hard to balance. Let's say there's a 0 day, and when it's not exploited, there is no loss. But when it would be immediately exploited, there would be high urgency to fix it. But once it's fixed, there is not a lot of value that it keeps having. So it's important to look at the urgency of what you're trying to do, and that's why it's called like the cost of delay there as well. So whenever you balance your things on the backlog, you have to think about like the urgency versus the value, and it is really hard because this prioritization of urgency, if an exploit is never used or something is never happening, you cannot balance that really well. We have many costs of delay causes, like when something isn't shipped on time, when we're working multiple projects at the same time, the effort and the costs of the delay of doing it right, anything that slows it down because of the technical depth. There's a lot of different items that can slow us down. And it's not easy because we're actually, in a complex system. And predicting is, even though we might think we're an expert in the field, predicting is really hard. Some would say no estimates, but it's just really hard to do this. So it is a continuous process of reiterating what's important. Like you see this happening when there's a war room of a major incident, the whole backlog is reshifted. So this reshuffling needs to be done, a lot of the time, just to make sure that we're doing the most important thing first. And sometimes there is a lot of things that we are not aware of that they exist, like new security vulnerabilities, new items that we've never heard of and that we need to protect about. So when I talk to several of the security people, they leave like a room, not only for things that are happening on the backlog that we know, but also for the things that need attention that we haven't identified yet. It's like having enough buffer. And that's what, if you look at utilization, a lot of the managers, they look at having a backlog of 100% utilization. And in his presentation, he explains about the utility that it makes most of the sense to have a utilization of about 85%. And the reason why is because that allows you to have freedom to deal with the unknowns. And you see that expressed in security plans by saying, well, we're going to address like 80% of our time. We're going to deal with the known issues, and 20% we're going to deal with zero-day exploits or more esoteric. So just to balance that out. Because if you go to 100% utilization, there is no room to deal with the new stuff coming in or the things that we haven't planned before. So bear in mind that you don't strive, again, for the optimize of having some people more working 100% of the time without leaving them a buffer. And John Willis actually talks about this flexibility or this room for freedom in another way. It's by saying that if you have a system or a process, to your process delivery or for your continuous delivery, that's like 100% defined, it might look somewhere on the right, right? Your system B, A goes to this, and then that deploy, if this case happens, that. But what if it fails, right? What system has the most degrees of freedom to deal with something that you didn't anticipate first? Is that system B or A, where things are more loosely coupled and they're like with guidelines instead of like actual processes that are 100% fixed? And if you take that in the the advice that is given is that you don't want to be the blocker yourself. You want to keep things working even when you're not there. This is the same spirit of keeping a buffer of decisions. So you work around those decisions as well. And that resulted for me to think about, are we actually increasing trust or are we increasing the confidence? And I know this might be a play of word in English, but confidence is more about probability. If I run my test 50 times, I expect that on the 51st time, they will still be there. When my system has never failed on my laptop, it will always work. So we are generalizing probability. We're not talking about real trust when what to do if things go wrong. So that led me to the notion of trust, and there's an interesting book called the Tin Book of Trust, where they talk about 4 parts in the trust. In a relationship, is there trust? When you look at the sincerity, how sincere is that person? Are they doing what they say they're doing? How reliable? So if they say, I'm gonna do something for you, how reliable that they're actually doing it? And then how competent are they to know whether they be able to deliver what they promise to you? And then do they actually care? And care is an important part, because imagine you don't care about security. You can be sincere by saying, yeah, I'll fix this bug. You can be reliable, so I'll do it in a week, and I know how to do it, but you can still not care. And if the care level is low amongst people, then the trust actually goes down a lot. So when talking to security folks, what they really want to build the trust from developers is, they want security be on the sprint planning. So they want to have it on the backlog, and they want to have security as part of the addition of done. So they want to be reliable when whenever something goes up, they want to have it secure. And they want to teach people, developers, to get better at security. And overall, the one word you always hear, we want to make it a shared responsibility. Is that actually a shared responsibility, or is that just shifting the burden, to other people in the company, or shifting your work? And that's what makes it the care part of making that difference. So what developers want from security is actually pretty similar. They want to, in a backlog, they want security people to understand that there's other things besides security on the backlog. So coming again on this mixture of backlog is a huge part of the discussion and friction between DevSec and Ops. They want to have the stories reviewed. Again, competence. They want to have, people from developers, they actually want to learn a lot from the security people. At first they might think we know a lot, but most of all, they want to learn from the people. But if they're not coming, they're not explaining, they're not at the the stand-up meeting, that makes them want to question sincerity, reliability, and that they even care about security. And for the devs, the security people need to care about features as well, and not just about security. And security is not a binary thing, right? So when you look at a dependency, a library, there's so many questions to ask yourself. And it isn't just asking, like, is this open source library secure or not? If you look at the sincerity questions, are they following their code of conduct? Do they reply to pull requests? Are they competent? So, have they a reputation? Is there a change log? All signs of competence that you're looking for to increase your trust. And are they reliable? So, whenever there's a bug reported, will they fix it in the next release? Do they have like a regular cadence? And like different sides of looking at how they care about the library by saying, like, are the pull requests still open? How many people are still committing? How long does it take for a security vulnerability to be fixed? So it isn't just saying, yeah, I'm looking at the technical things of the library. So we're actually looking at the people behind the library, the people working on the library, as looking for the trust, whether we should trust the library. And it will not just be like, is it a lookup in the CD database, or will it have like static analysis? That's part of it. And, you could say that's part of the competence that the system is looking at. But there's a lot more than that. But what is interesting is that you have to keep in mind that we generally think of others to be less trustworthy than ourselves. We think that, we can be trusted. Like, we have all that people can rely on us, that we're sincere, that we care, but we don't think the others are aligned with us that much. And this reminded me of promise theory by Mark Burgess. It's a universal theory about thinking about systems by thinking that all things in the systems are making promises to other parts of the system. And it is deceptively simple. So it begins like you're an agent. Like, everybody's an agent. Security is an agent. Ops is an agent. Developers are an agent. The managers, even the organizations, but also the systems. So there's a whole mixture of agents. And whenever you do your job of doing something or estimating something or delivering something, you're making promises to others in the system. And this promise is made to others on a good faith. It's not that you're like keeping information. You're making this promise. I can do this. Like, I can deliver this. Several things. And the others can definitely make a promise to you. Like security says to the devs, I will teach you. I will keep the system secure. And the thing is that you will depend on a lot of other agents to keep your own promises. And that is really hard, because one of the things in promise theory that you can't do, is really rely on the others. And we have a lot of dependencies. If you look at the business has a lot of dependencies on the market, on the users, on the whole IT organization. Devs has dependencies on the library, on timing, on the project manager. Security on threat intel, services, feedback from ops, monitoring system, and ops about external services, microservices, SaaS services, hardware, runtimes, OS distributions. You can go on and on of dependencies in the system, and they're all considered agents in the system. But the most crucial part of promise theory is that you cannot make a promise on somebody's other behalf. So the security can never say with 100% certainty that they will keep the company secure. The developers can never say, we're delivering business value, and we can decide that the feature first. That's what goes on. So it is always a negotiation, and you can only deal with your own promise, and you cannot overpromise. So the others can try to do it, But just as systems has learned that, reliability is not by making everything 100% sure that they keep 100% uptime, it's by making this more resilient, by making different choices. And this collaboration is a common ground of discussion. And a lot of the common ground is seen as a friction point. But the fact that you can't keep a promise, if you would describe your dialogue to a security person as, I can never keep my promise that I'll deliver the feature, or security says, I can never deliver this. Okay, what can you deliver? So a practical thing could be, yes, I can deliver that whenever the system, we run our test, that there will be a test for SQL injection, or whenever I can deliver something in prod, that there's a monitoring probe installed. Those are things you can deliver without over promising. So that's an important point. Like whenever somebody's over promising, call them out and discuss what they're actually saying, and keep in mind that they cannot make any promises on behalf of others. So a promise lives with the fact that it's not guaranteed. And this is really weird, because coming from an ecosystem or an organizational style where it's imperative to say, well, you must make everything secure. You must deliver as fast as possible because we need the business value. We must keep everything up because that's the most important thing. Like, it is not a guarantee. And once you start thinking in this failure mode, this is more important. It's on a little side note, you can only, keep your work on your own promise is something like you bet on yourself. So if somebody asks you to bet on somebody else's behavior, that becomes really fast that you feel out of control. And that's what you're actually doing, because you cannot control the system, you cannot control all the others, and you cannot force the others to do that, because it needs to be mutually agreed. Like, nobody can force something onto you. You could try, but the cost of doing that will be pretty high if you don't care, if you don't seem reliable to keep the obligation. And that's kind of the old control style. It's like, I put an obligation on you to do this. No, we kind of have to discuss what we mutually agree upon, so we can keep our promises without over-promising. And that's why a lot of the policies and procedures that people put in place, whether it's for the business or the developers or security, they're helpful, but they cannot be seen as a control to keep your promise at all costs. So again, balancing the effort versus the risk or the business value you get of it is very important. And the more you work together, the more that language of a promise will be shared. So you're saying the same things. Like, for example, I never heard about the word security posture before. And it looks strange to me because, in Dev and Ops, it's not something you would say. But once you learn the language, you kind of are better able to talk in the same language. And we are totally fine with the fact that it can be conflicting in the system. But we're always looking at a way of, openly discussing how we can keep our promise, because it's a totally different approach than saying, well, A said something to B, so he demands it from me. No, can I keep it? And it's okay to have a conflict of opinion as long as we look and discuss things. And another thing to look for where that is happening, this discussion, is about triaging. Like, what first on the backlog? Business value, feature, risk, stability. And look out when everybody gets the upvote. I've been in a situation where I would have to help 12 departments, and then you get them all in the room, you have them talking about consensus. When they leave the room, they all want to be the first on the ticketing system that you work on. So, be aware of this kind of triaging fallacy. So how do you keep your promise if you can't rely on others? And most of the time, you actually do that by creating a choice. Instead of have somebody, push the choice on you, you want to have a way of pulling whatever option that you need. We do this by creating, options. Multi-cloud is creating an option. If one cloud fails, we can use the other. When we write like an abstraction layer in our code, if we use one database, we can switch to the others. So we're kind of creating a choice there as well. And that, just as in systems, that choice creates actually the single point of failure. And that option creates better ways or multiple ways to keep your promises instead of only one way. And in a way, you could say shadow IT is the system creating a second option. I will go to the cloud because my traditional system engineers are not delivering what I needed. I'm going to a SaaS service because my developers are not delivering the feature that I needed, and so on. So this options creation will happen anyway. So it's best to be upfront about it as well. But if you have a lot of agents, it makes sense that agents with a similar goal, they can be grouped. And what went wrong in the past is that we grouped agents with the goal saying, you do security, you do features, you do stability, where now the super agent needs to be, we're the company and we want to deliver these features. And to deliver that features, we create our own team, and that's the super agent. It's the business goal that is aligned and not the other goals that need to be aligned. This is also why you would see teams taking care of the whole cycle, because they can keep the promise of doing the uptime, building the features, keeping it secure. They can do that with their own group. And so by having these multiple super agents, you create like choices again. That's something that people do in they have like 2-4 projects, do similar things, and then they can learn from it. So when one fails, they can use like another project outcome and go from there. So it isn't about cloning a new super agent that everybody becomes one. It is about the diversity. It is about having different opinions. It is about having different backgrounds in the system. Because having those backgrounds will make you communicate, and we know we already allowed friction, but what's also super important is that the internal discussion speed is key. So let's say the company grows bigger and bigger, communicating to everybody in that company will slow you down. But if you keep smaller groups, you can keep the interaction and the internal speed of the team going without too much effort. And that's why, in promise theory, they say, the more you scale, it's harder to keep your promise as well. So, and another thing to be aware of is that there's so much noise coming into the backlog. Business will think about new buzzwords coming into the market that they need to address. Devs about bugs, what broke first, bugs versus features. Security is about attacks or preventing stuff, and ops is about reliability, looking at the errors, looking at the tickets, and so on. And what's happening actually in promise theory is that you have to see everything as a relationship. Like whenever the groups are working together, it's a relationship, and you have to be aware that not everybody, you cannot talk to everybody in the system. So that's where this relationship among people, among groups, comes into the equation. And, given that we've discussed that, triage, prioritization, and also on, there's a lot of common ground. And a lot of people just highlight the differences between DevSec and Ops. But I think there's a lot of things we can learn about planning risk versus planning features, versus, triaging, issues in production that we can learn from each other. But we're all optimizing it for our own things. And, we need to do work ourselves. And it's easy to say when you're a dev, security needs to do blah, or vice versa. Others will judge us by our behavior. And it's easy for ourselves. We know what our behavior would be, so we can take the attention. But others will look at your behavior. And that's what we need to change. We need to become trustworthy. And we have to reverse the equation by saying, how does security become more trustworthy? How do the developers become more trustworthy? And then do that yourself. And it's not by saying what the others must do. You cannot, premise theory says, you cannot force somebody else to do it, but you can inform and become more trustworthy by keeping your own promises, and not over-promising, but keeping your own promise. And it will be a slow process, step by step, because trust builds up, very slowly, and it goes away very fast. So you have to be aware of it. That this is like a really slow process to deal with, but it makes sense. And it is different than building up your confidence by adding more tools and adding more tools. It is about, how do you keep that confidence turn into trust amongst the people? Like, imagine your CI system would go down and everything had to be done manually. Would the people still do the same things, or would they do different things than your CI system would be doing? So in other words, do you trust them to do the right thing without the tools? That's something you have to ask yourself. Here's a little bit of homework. A lot of the books are about optimizing the pipeline and delivery and technology in the process. I like to read the books that actually improve the day-to-day conversations about people. I think the book is now coming out, Agile Conversations, how to deal with your own head. Like, how do you become trustworthy? Look at your own things that you do yourself and not just judge the other person's. And unus fiat ex pluribus, the fact that Pythagoras said that you can, by loving each other, you can actually become one. And that's basically what we're trying to do. And, you could say DevSec and Ops. We don't need another term. It's just Dev and Ops, but the most important thing is that we kind of love, get empathy for the others, understand the others, and that the other kind of, has empathy for our problems, so that, and they become more caring and more trustworthy of what we do. So by this, this is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you keep safe and stay at home, as we say in Dutch. Blijf in uw kot. It's important. Keep everything, good, and hope we can meet each other somewhere at another conference again.
Oh, so nice. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you. Your presentation was amazing as usual. Congrats. And I will say 1 million of times, thank you. Thank you. It's amazing.
You're welcome. It was it was fun to do. So, I know there's like 1 million messages now on YouTube. So, I don't know if there are any questions for me.
Oh, so nice. Let me see. Hey, pessoal, se vocês tiverem alguma dúvida aí ou quiserem fazer alguma pergunta para o Patrick, vamos fazer agora. Olha só, já estão aparecendo algumas. Let's see, for example, this one from Paulo. Patrick, it seemed hard for me to implement this culture at a company. I understand that it is a slow process, but how can we start this at company? You have some tips? Or?
Yeah, so I think with Dev and Ops, I usually found a point of discussion where I would have the different groups meet, right? And usually that I use the exercise of mapping the system by saying, tell me everything that's, that's in the systems on the application side or on the development side. And there's not one person who knows everything. So once you start mapping, I know this. Oh, I didn't know that existed, and that, and it's starting that conversation of, what is there? That is the first point, and then, like, what always helps me, and I know it sounds very simple. What is the real bottleneck? Yeah. And having that discussion and then agreeing on that bottleneck, and fixing that bottleneck enough, right? Don't overfix it. Don't spend 2 years on that one bottleneck. Fix it until something else becomes a bottleneck. And so what actually is helping is not per se the conversation itself. That's getting a better understanding of the system, but having that discussion really helps. Understanding the mutual pain points, the mutual insights, the mutual focuses that the different people have, and trying to build that up as a consensus. There's no magic bullet. I'm sorry. There's no go here and do that. I like, if you read the book about Agile Conversations, the book is all about objectivizing conversations. So when you ask me, do you think it's going to be delivered at that time? And I say, yeah, but in my head, I say it will not. It will not, but I will never dare to say it. It's like having these hard conversations and making them more neutral. For example, you do them by the board, so on a whiteboard, so it doesn't become this one-on-one discussion. The board brings it to a diagram that becomes more objective. So kind of having these conversations, but kind of making them more neutral, and then building up the understanding. I hope that helps.
So nice, so nice. So Fabiano asked, how can we ethically test people's confidence? It's hard.
Yeah, so I think it is, confidence is about probability, right? So I'm guessing he means trust in this case. How can we test whether we can trust somebody else, right? And I think objectively, we could, let's say you have a one-on-one meeting. You can say, well, you did these things, and you kind of ask them about why they did it. And it is enough of a test. You don't need to put them in situations where you're gonna test whether you can trust them or not. You kind of have to learn what they're doing and give them the feedback of what they're doing. I can totally understand that they might do something else that you wanted. It could be that they need more confidence, or that they don't care. And what are you going to do? You're going to force that onto them? You cannot. It will not work. So try to find a consensus, and maybe they're not the right person on the job. That's a hard truth, but it might be that they're, it isn't the way that they expect it to go, or the way they think. I'm not saying you have to find only people that think alike, because that's another mistake. But it's, you kind of have to understand their thing as well. And maybe they did it because they didn't trust you. So it is really not only the other person that becomes the trusting.
Nice. I agree with 100%. Look, Michele Ribeiro. Oops, sorry.
Oh, that was too fast.
Security is generally seen as a luxury item, and tools are often expensive. This creates a negative incentive for vendors to create tools for scale. How do you believe this is changing? I believe with cloud DevOps and...
Well, I think there's a general tendency of that people. So in the beginning, people were very focused on keeping security inside the company, right? So whatever decision you made, it had to be done with tools that are internal, because it's that sense of control. We control that. We know what they do. I think the mindset has changed. For example, with cloud, we're running our on servers on an external system, on an external party that we didn't use before. So we start trusting the bigger clouds, just as we started trusting external open source libraries. And I think there's going to be more and more SaaS solutions that we will see, almost like a security supplier, security solution, that we will start using this inside our own companies. And by doing that, I think those tools will scale again, because they can scale across the different companies and improve their tools with maybe anonymous data or different approaches or things that they see, like this vulnerability is coming in, and 5 companies have created a patch, so maybe you should patch as well. So the scales there of a SaaS, I think will help the security vendors, but it actually creating trust, and all vendors are winning our trust, but you have to see them as part of the equation, as suppliers, as part of the system, that they are part of our company and part of meeting our goals.
So nice. Sorry. So nice. I think this is the last one, right? But I think it's a good question for a guy that lives in Belgium. So because Belgium is famous to have the amazing beer, right? Patrick, it has nothing to do with the talk, but which beer did you prefer, or a nice one to taste for people to taste?
So I don't drink a lot of beer anymore, and I usually say that I fell like Obelisk, the character. I fell in a bucket of beer when I was young, and so I don't need to drink that much of beer. But when I would do like a beer, it is like a blonde beer, a wheat beer, and it's called Hoegaarden. So if you're ever in Belgium, check out that beer or buy that somewhere else. So
with orange, maybe, right?
Yeah, so, I don't like the orange. I just go for the beer. So.
Nice. Hey, and you, do you like the experience to talk here in the online?
Yeah, and it's nice to see all the questions in the chat. I'll try to see if I can reply later. If not, you can just find me on Twitter and ask me there. My hashtag, my handle is @PatrickDubois, so it's easy to find me to do that. So.
Nice.
It was fun. It was really fun.
Nice, man. It's a really big privilege to us to listen and amazing presentation made by a guy like you. So thank you for your availability to give to us this amazing presentation, and I hope to have you here in the future to speak to us again. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Let's hope we can make that happen. And thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure. So Jefferson, good work, and the whole team.
Thank you, same to you. And we have a slogan here, a type of a slogan here. So every time in the end of the video, I say "vai." It's like go, right? So can you speak to us to finish this video? Just vai.
Just say something or what?
Yeah, vai. Yeah, and that's it.
Vai?
Yeah, this. Vai?
Oh, okay. Vai. Okay, signing off. Bye.
Perfect. See you. Pessoal,
okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Pessoal, muito obrigado aí, valeu demais pela presença hoje, foi sensacional hoje com o Patrick Dubois aqui, é muito bom. Eu me matando aqui no inglês, mas eu acho que deu para levar de buenas. Então é isso aí, vejo vocês amanhã, o último talk aqui da Fiquem em Casa Conf, então espero vocês amanhã aqui nesse mesmo bate-horário, certo? Valeu, pessoal. Thank you, Patrick. See you later, man.
What?
Nice. Bye-bye.